The great throne room of Arachtheo was cold, wide, and silent. Hundreds of servants stood around, heads bowed, not daring to breathe too loudly. In the center, on a high golden seat, sat Queen Zilara, the ruler of the Arachthal Empire. Her skin shimmered like silver under the soft blue lights, but her eyes were empty. She looked beautiful, powerful, and perfect, but something was missing. The royal doctors had just finished their tests. One of them nervously stepped forward, holding a glowing tablet. "Your Majesty," he said, voice shaking, "there is nothing physically wrong with you." The queen said nothing. "Your nerves, your brain, your chemistry, all perfect," he continued. "But we still cannot explain why you have never experienced a climax." The queen slowly turned her head, eyes sharp. "The ancient texts speak of it," she said coldly. "A moment of intense feeling, of warmth, of light in the chest and fire in the body." "Yes, my queen," the doctor whispered. "But those are myth stories from before the age of purity." "Then perhaps myths are all I have left," she said, standing up gracefully. The queen left the room, her long cape flowing. Behind her, she walked through empty halls, each step echoing in her private chamber. She stood before a giant glass wall showing stars and galaxies. Even among all this beauty, she felt hollow. For 200 years, she had ruled her people with wisdom and strength. She had never laughed, never cried, and never felt. Her ancestors had warned that with power came sacrifice. Over time, the royal bloodline had lost the ability to feel physical pleasure. It was believed to be weakness, a distraction. But Queen Zilara began to wonder, was it truly lost? Or stolen from them by force? A soft beep echoed in her chamber. The voice of her military general came through the speaker. "My queen, we have captured a trespasser," he said. "A human male." She raised an eyebrow. "A human?" "Yes, he was found inside the ruins of the Forbidden Temple, somehow untouched by the defense drones." The queen felt a strange pull in her chest. "Bring him to the palace," she said quietly. "Alive," she added, before the general could ask. Hours later, the human was brought into her presence. He was tall, messy-haired, and wore a torn black coat. Chains hung from his wrists, but his head was high and proud. The guards pushed him to kneel, but he resisted. He stood there, staring at the queen as if she were just a person, not a goddess. Everyone in the room froze. Weapons were drawn, and the air turned tense, but the queen raised her hand, and the guards stepped back. The human didn't blink. "Do you not fear death?" the queen asked softly. He smirked. "Fear? Nah," he said. "But I do have questions." She tilted her head, intrigued. "You stand before the most powerful being in this galaxy, and you ask questions?" "I've seen gods fall," he said, "and you don't look broken to me." The queen's heart did something strange. It skipped a beat. A warmth crawled up her neck. But she quickly turned away. "Lock him in the lower chamber," she ordered, "but keep him well fed." That night, she couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, replaying his words again and again. "You don't look broken to me." No one had ever dared speak to her like that. No one had ever looked at her like that. She sat up in bed and pressed a button. "Bring the human to my chamber," she said, surprising even herself. Moments later, he was standing before her again, this time without chains. "Tell me," she asked, "why were you in the Forbidden Temple?" "I was looking for truth," he said, "and maybe for someone like you." The queen didn't answer. Instead, she studied him in silence. Was it possible that this man, this human, held answers to the mystery of her bloodline, the myth of the lost climax, the feeling she had never known? Was it truly a lie? Or could it be awakened? Outside the palace, the stars burned brightly, but inside, something far more dangerous was beginning to stir. A spark, asterisk. A loud slam echoed in the Guinevere queen's chamber as the door shut behind the guards. She stood in silence, her silver eyes fixed on the strange human who now sat calmly on a soft cushion. He didn't kneel, didn't tremble, and that alone made her curious. Most beings cried in her presence. begged, or lost their minds, but this man looked around the room like it was just another place. His name was Elias, and he was unlike anyone she had ever seen. She circled him slowly, like a hunter studying prey, but he didn't move. "You are not afraid of me," she said quietly. "Should I be?" He asked with a shrug. "You command armies," he added. "But I've seen men fall for less than truth." The queen narrowed her eyes. Truth. It was a rare thing in her court. Too many spoke only to please her, to survive. But Elias was different. He was either foolish or honest or both. She sat across from him, the distance between them thick with silence. "You were found inside the Forbidden's temple," she said. "I was," he replied without shame. "No one should have survived that place," she continued. "Yet you came out without a scratch." "I wasn't there to steal," he said. "I was searching for answers." She leaned forward slightly, her voice colder. "Answers to what?" "To why your people think pleasure is a myth," he said. Her breath caught for a moment, and she didn't know why. "You speak too freely," she warned. "I've learned that silence protects lies," he replied, his voice calm like water. For a long moment, neither spoke. A soft hum from the chamber walls filled the space. Then the queen said, "Do you know what the climax is?" He smiled faintly. "I know what it can be," he said. "But I think your people have forgotten." She stood suddenly and turned her back to him. "My ancestors erased all impurity, all weakness, all desire," she said. "They called it evolution. But was it?" Elias asked gently. "Or was it fear, dressed as progress?" Her fingers tightened into a fist. No one had dared say such words in her lifetime. Not in her palace, not in her presence. And yet she did not call the guards that night. She ordered that Elias not be returned to the prison chamber. Instead, he was given a soft room in the east wing, close to the royal library. She claimed it was to study him, observe him, but it was more than that. She began visiting him at odd hours, asking strange questions about humans, about emotions, about things she had only read in Forbidden's texts. Would answer her with stories, sometimes funny, sometimes quiet. She listened with eyes that never blinked, heart beating just a little faster. The more he spoke, the more she realized how empty her palace had become. Beautiful, yes, but lifeless. Silent halls, cold laws, perfect servants, but no warmth. One night, she asked him a question that shocked even herself. "What does it feel like?" He looked at her with those honest eyes. "It's not just body," he said. "It's heart. It's trust. It's letting go." Letting go, she had never done that. She had always held power with both hands, never loosening her grip. And now, this human spoke of release, as if it were strength, not weakness. She reached out that night, not far, just enough to brush his hand with hers. The touch was light, almost accidental, but in that one moment, her body responded with a jolt. A warmth spread through her palm and climbed up her arm. She gasped, quickly pulling away. Elias didn't laugh, didn't smirk. He only looked at her gently and whispered, "You're starting to feel it, aren't you?" She didn't answer, couldn't. Instead, she turned and left the room, her heart pounding for the first time in centuries. Outside her chamber, she told no one of what had happened, but she placed her hand against her chest, feeling the warmth that still lingered there. She didn't know if it was the beginning of something beautiful or dangerous, but she knew one thing clearly: the myth was no longer silent. The palace shook just before midnight, not from war or quake, but from something quiet and deadly. A soft hum filled the walls, followed by a pulse of red light through the queen's private floor. Servants ran to check systems, guards locked down exits, and scanners flashed warnings. But the source wasn't external. It came from the queen herself. She had been dreaming, something she never did. In her dream, she stood in a dark field under 2 red moons. She was not wearing her crown, her robes, or her cold expression. She was just a woman, breathing, shivering, waiting. And in that dream, Elias stood behind her. He didn't touch her, but she felt him like a fire at her back. When she woke up, Her body was hot, her fingers twitching, and on her inner wrist, a strange mark glowed faint, pulsing like a heartbeat. No Arakfal queen had ever reported such symptoms. She called for her royal medics in secret. They scanned her body and grew pale. "My queen," one of them said quietly, "your neural centers have awakened." That word sent silence across the room. Awakened. It hadn't been used in the palace for over 500 years, because it referred to something forbidden, emotion. The queen dismissed them quickly and stood at her tall window. Stars blinked outside like they were watching her. Below, in the east wing, Elias was awake too, sketching something on an old paper scroll when she entered his room without warning. He didn't look surprised. "I felt something," she said. Voice lower than usual, he looked up at her gently. "What did it feel like?" He asked. "Like my blood turned into light," she whispered. She sat across from him again. "Not as ruler, but as seeker. Tell me," she said, "what is your world like?" So he told her, not of power or machines, but of small things. Warm meals, shared laughter, holding hands during cold nights. "Do you always speak like that?" She asked. "Like what?" "Like the world is kind, because sometimes it is," he answered. "And that's worth remembering." The queen stared at him, unsure how someone could be so strong and still gentle. Among her people, strength meant silence, emotionless eyes, unshakable orders. But this human showed something else, something softer, more dangerous. It made her question everything. That night, she walked past her throne and entered the Forbidden's vault. Only the royal family had access to it. Inside were old scrolls, broken tech, forgotten symbols. In the center was a sealed glass case, holding a golden ring, the Echo Band. According to legend, it once connected two minds during the moment of highest sensation. It was said to burn if placed on someone incapable of feeling. No queen had ever dared to wear it. With trembling hands, she opened the case and slid the ring on her finger. Nothing burned, nothing screamed, but her heart skipped a beat, and her breath caught. It stayed, cool and firm, almost welcoming. She didn't tell anyone, not her advisors, not her guards. Only Elias noticed the next day. He pointed to the ring on her hand and said, "You found something." "I don't know what it means," she replied. "I think you do," he said softly. Later that day, during a council meeting, she heard words she had never noticed before. A servant speaking too fast, a guard tapping his foot nervously. Even her royal advisor, Lord Caliph, seemed too interested in Elias's location. She realized something important. People were watching her more closely now, and not all of them were pleased. When she returned to Elias that evening, she said only one thing: "They fear what you're doing to me. Then they fear you." "Changing," he replied. She didn't argue that night. Someone attempted to poison Elias. It was quick, hidden in his water, but he noticed the strange shimmer before drinking. He brought the cup to the queen himself, saying nothing, just placing it on her table. Her eyes burned with anger, not because he almost died, but because someone dared to harm what was hers. She ordered every chamber searched, every bottle tested, every servant questioned, but no one confessed. When her advisor tried to calm her, she said only one thing: "Touch him again, and I will make you feel something worse than death." No one in the court had seen her like this. Not cold, not detached, but fierce, alive, dangerous in a new way. Some whispered that the queen was becoming impure. Others feared she was becoming unstoppable. In her chamber, the ring on her finger pulsed again, as if it agreed, and deep inside her chest, the myth breathed softly, no longer silent, no longer dead asterisk. The queen fell, not in battle, not in ceremony, but in the middle of a quiet council meeting. One moment she was standing tall, listening to reports about trade routes and border patrols. The next, her knees buckled, and her hands trembled as if touched by unseen fire. Gasps echoed through the marble hall, and advisors rushed to her side, but she pushed them away with shaking arms. "I am not weak," she growled, but her voice cracked mid-sentence. She stumbled into her private chamber before the medics could finish scanning her. She locked the doors, pressed her back against the wall, and slid to the ground. Her body was pulsing, not in pain, but in something she couldn't name. Every breath felt too heavy, every heartbeat too loud, and worse, her thoughts were not silent. They were filled with Elias. She saw his face, the way he looked at her like she was more than a throne. She remembered his voice, calm and fearless, and it made her chest tighten. Her entire life had been without these things: emotion, longing, even confusion. But now, they swirled in her like a storm, and she couldn't stop it. The Royal II asked if emergency medical override was required. She didn't answer. Instead, she whispered, "Bring Elias when he arrived." She didn't stand. She was still on the floor. Her royal robes tangled around her legs. He rushed to her, not asking for permission, not bowing. He just placed a hand on her shoulder, and she leaned into it without thinking. "I don't know what's happening to me," she said, voice small. "You're becoming real." He replied. She laughed once, a soft sound that surprised them both. "I was real before," she said. "No," he whispered, brushing a lock of silver hair from her face. "You were a statue wearing skin." She didn't push him away. Instead, she asked a question she'd never asked anyone in 200 years. "Will you stay here tonight?" He didn't answer with words. He just sat beside her, shoulder to shoulder, breathing slowly, matching her pace. Time passed, but they didn't speak, and in that silence, something between them bloomed. Not passion, not yet, but understanding. She was not just a queen to him, and he was not just a curiosity to her. In the morning, her advisor Lord Calith requested an audience. She allowed it. Wearing a calm mask, though her fingers still trembled, he bowed low and said, "Your Majesty, rumors are spreading." "Let them," she replied. "They say you've bonded with the human." She said nothing. "They say you've begun to change." He added carefully. She looked him dead in the eyes and said, "They're not wrong." Lord Calith stepped back, his face pale. "There are those," he said slowly, "who may not accept a queen who feels. Then they can kneel before someone else." She said coldly, "But while I rule, I will feel everything." That night, she invited Elias to the ancient spa chamber, a sacred place no outsider had ever seen. Steam filled the air, warm and sweet. She stood there in a simple robe. No crown, no symbols of power, and for the first time she looked vulnerable. "I need to know," she said softly. "If this is real or just madness, only one way to find out." Elias replied, stepping forward. They stood close, not touching yet, but the energy between them danced like lightning. She reached out and placed her hand on his chest, feeling the strong beat of his heart, and something inside her echoed. Not fear, not confusion, but heat, spreading from her fingers to her spine. When she pulled away, her lips parted as if words might come, but none did. Elias touched her hand gently and whispered, "You're not broken, Zilara." She didn't flinch at the name. Instead, she leaned in, pressing her forehead to his. "I think I believe you," she whispered. But just as the moment deepened, a sharp alarm rang through the palace. The doors burst open, and armed guards surrounded them, weapons raised. The lead officer shouted, "The Galactic Church has issued a holy decree. Elias must be turned over for purification." The queen's face went cold, her voice like metal. "Touch him," she said, "and your blood will be the first to stain this floor." The guards hesitated, eyes darting between duty and fear. Elias looked at her calmly, ready to surrender if it meant peace. But the queen took his hand in hers and stepped forward. "No. One takes what is mine," she said, and the room seemed to darken with her words. Far above, ships from the Galactic Church began entering orbit, and deep in the vault of the Forbidden's temple, ancient lights flickered on once more. Something had awakened, and it would not sleep again. The sky above Arak-Thal turned blood red from the high tower. The queen watched as the first of the Galactic Church warships broke through the outer defense ring. Silent but powerful, They moved like silver blades, cutting across the stars. Their message was simple: surrender the human, or face divine judgment. The queen stood without blinking, her hands still wrapped around Elias's. Her generals begged her to reason, her advisors shouted of tradition. But all she saw was the fear behind their words. They feared that she had changed, and they feared even more that she might never change back. She walked into the command chamber and gave a single command: raise the palace shields. The room fell silent. My queen? One of the captains asked, voice trembling. You heard me, she said. If the church wants a war, they will have it. Elias stood at her side, silent but steady. He didn't ask her to stop, didn't beg her to run. He knew the moment had come. The queen had made her choice. Not just for him, but for herself. Explosions lit up the sky as energy shields activated. Citizens across the capital looked up, unsure if they were being protected or imprisoned. The queen made a live transmission, one broadcast to every screen. In the empire, her face appeared without her crown, without her royal mask, just her eyes glowing with fire. For too long, she said, we have lived by rules written by hands that feared the truth. And now that truth stands beside me. The message ended, and across the stars, 1,000 whispers began. Some called her mad, some called her holy, but none could ignore her anymore. In the secret chambers beneath the palace, she took Elias to the hidden portal, an ancient system buried deep under marble and history. It led to the Temple of Origin, a place where no living Arakthal had ever returned from. If we are to survive, she said, we must go back to the beginning. He nodded, no fear in his eyes, only trust. They stepped through the silver gate, and the air changed instantly. It was heavier, older, filled with a strange hum that made their skin tingle. The walls were made of obsidian stone, pulsing with blue veins of light. The temple responded to her presence. Torches flared without flame, doors opened without touch, and deeper inside, they found the truth hidden by her ancestors. Statues of Arakthal queens lined the chamber, each more lifelike than the last. Not cold or distant, but carved with expressions of wonder, joy, and pain. The queen touched one and flinched. It was warm. These are not just statues, Elias said. They're memories. He was right. The temple was alive, and it remembered everything. In the center stood a stone platform shaped like a heart. It pulsed in rhythm with her own heartbeat. A voice echoed from the walls, not mechanical, but ancient and female. Who brings the bond? The voice asked. I do, the queen said, stepping forward with Elias. And who awakens the silence? I do, she whispered again, her hand tightening in his. Light surrounded them, wrapping them in a soft glow. The queen felt her body react, but not in pain. It was opening, unfolding like a flower in the sun. For the first time, her mind and body didn't feel like two separate machines. They were one, alive. She looked at Elias, and he understood, not with words, but with his touch. He stepped close, placing his forehead against hers, and the temple sang. A low, vibrating hum filled the chamber. Her spine arched slightly as heat spread through her skin. Not just pleasure, but connection, depth, a feeling of being known. She cried out, not in agony, but in release. Something inside her broke, and something else bloomed in its place. The platform dimmed, and the voice returned, softer this time. The queen is awakened. She collapsed into Elias's arms, heart racing, body glowing. He held her gently, breathing with her, waiting, and when she looked into his eyes, she whispered, the myth was never a myth. Far above, the palace trembled again, not from attack, but from power. Her people felt it, even from a distance. The queen was no longer a symbol, no longer cold, no longer untouchable. She had returned as something more, darkness wrapped the ancient temple like a thick blanket. Only faint blue lights pulsed from the walls, casting shadows that seemed to move. The queen and Elias stepped deeper into the forgotten halls. Each footstep echoed louder than the last, as if the temple itself was holding its breath. The air was heavy, filled with a strange energy that prickled at their skin. Around them, statues of queens from ages past watched silently. Their eyes seemed alive, glowing faintly. The queen felt a chill but also a strange comfort. Elias reached out and touched the cold stone floor. "The temple knows you," he said softly. "I can feel it responding." Suddenly, a deep voice filled the chamber, ancient and clear. "Only the true bond can awaken this sacred power," it said. The queen stepped forward, her heart pounding like thunder. She placed her hand on the stone platform in the center. The moment her skin touched the surface, a warm light spread through her veins. It traveled to her heart and filled her with a feeling she had never known, not pain, not fear, but hope. Elias joined her, their hands meeting on the platform. Together, they completed the ancient ritual. The light around them grew brighter, enveloping them both. The queen's body shimmered as old energy awakened deep inside her. Her eyes glowed with new life, blue and bright. The temple sang softly, a melody lost to time. It told stories of love, of loss, of power shared. The queen felt it all, memories and emotions flooding her mind. She was no longer just a ruler, but a woman reborn. Suddenly the ground trembled. The temple reacted to their bond, but then a shadow moved. Dark and heavy, blocking the light, a figure appeared, an ancient guardian, fierce and unyielding. "You who awaken what was forbidden," it growled. "Prove your worth or be consumed." Elias stepped protectively in front of the queen. He faced the guardian without fear. The test was not just of strength, but of trust. Together, they fought the shadow, not with weapons, but with their bond, their hearts and minds connected, giving them power beyond any blade. As the guardian fell, the temple opened fully. The light exploded outward, filling every corner. The queen gasped, feeling the fullness of her awakening. She was alive in every sense, and the myth was true at last. She understood. Pleasure was not just a moment. It was a connection, a sharing, a truth beyond words. Elias smiled, his hand warm in hers. "We did it," he whispered. She nodded, tears shining in her glowing eyes. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, she was ready. Start with part 7 more unique. ChatGPT said. The stars blinked cold and distant above the palace. But inside, a storm raged fiercer than any battle before. The galactic church's warships filled the sky, their weapons ready to strike. Yet the queen stood on her balcony, glowing with a power no one had ever seen. Her eyes shone bright, not with fear, but with fire. She stepped forward, her voice ringing through the city like thunder. "I am no longer your silent queen," she declared. "I am alive, feeling, and free." Behind her, Elias stood tall, a human beside an alien queen, not as a servant, but as her equal, her partner. The church's commanders sent messengers, demanding surrender. But the people of Aruk Thal rallied, their hearts stirred by the queen's awakening. Ships in orbit buzzed with tension, ready for war. But something had shifted. Hope, courage, a new beginning. Deep within the palace, the ancient temple pulsed with light. Memories of queens long past whispered their blessings. The queen's transformation spread through her people like wildfire. No longer cold statues, but living, breathing beings capable of love and strength. As the first shots were fired, the queen raised her hand. A wave of energy flowed outward, a shield born of connection and power. The warships faltered, unable to break through. Her people cheered, not for war, but for life. Elias took her hand, his smile soft and sure. "You gave them back their soul," he said, "and you gave me mine," she whispered. Together, they faced the rising sun. The myth was real, and the queen was more than legend. She was hope itself.